Was a girl running in our group. She had a high-speed motor in a 40 Ford Coupe. She had a racing cam and a supercharged. Look out, buddy, hot rod and large. She's a hot rod. She's a hot rod.
Okay, I told you. You knew it was going to happen. This is something that I could have predicted, and I didn't. I didn't want to jinx this guy. I didn't want to poo-poo him. I wanted him to succeed, because the last guy before him that I thought was going to be good was not. Well, the federal government, the UAW monitor, is investigating Shawn Fain, the guy that took the UAW and straightened it out, of all things. Let me read you the story and you see what you think. A federal watchdog is probing whether United Auto Workers President Shawn Fain retaliated against a top official for refusing to divert benefits to his fiancée, according to federal court records. The disclosure came as part of the latest filing by Neil Borofsky. He is the federal court-appointed monitor, tasked with cleaning up the union after a corruption scandal put top officials behind bars. And it did. It did. Oh boy. It portrays an escalating standoff between Borofsky and the UAW, with top union officials delaying and obstructing investigations of Fain and two deputies by refusing to hand over key documents. Fain in May stripped duties from a guy, Rich Boyer, the UAW vice president, overseeing the union's dealings with Stellantis, reassigning the division under his own control. Fain cited a dereliction of Boyer's collective bargaining duties. In other words, he wasn't helping him get the new contracts. Boyer and other unnamed people soon after complained to the monitor that Fain's explanation was false. The real reason, they said, was that Boyer refused to accede to demands by the president and his agents that the vice president take actions that would have benefited the president's domestic partner and her sister, the monitor's report says. Sounds to me like this guy didn't do his job and he's making up something to cover his can. I just can't believe this. The monitor is also investigating a dispute between Fain and Secretary-Treasurer Margaret Mock, who had some of her power removed by the International Executive Board in February in response to allegations that she withheld funds for political leverage. In response, Mock alleged that she faced retaliation for, among other things, refusing to authorize unspecified expenditures at the request of and/or for the benefit of those in the president's office, but was an attempt to dilute her authority to make her similar denials in the future. I got to tell you, it sounds like we got a couple people not doing their job at the union, left over from the bad guys, and I knew they were going to pick on this guy. I just knew it, and why? The people that do the picking are in power right now. The ones that go after you with false stuff. And he has actually endorsed them. And the UAW has endorsed them.
So be careful.
I know.
Be careful, they come after us next.
I know. I mean, boy, can they find stuff wrong with me. Oh, my God. Oh, you don't have a book big enough. There's not a.
But there's also statute of limitations. So most of these things, hopefully, are off.
They're all BS. Before Sandy. Now that I got She Who Will Be Obeyed, I've been a good boy. But that doesn't mean they can't. How far did they go back on the? Oh yeah, geez, they go back on everybody. It's crazy, and I just don't like it. I thought this guy was doing it right. This guy he originally came out of the rank and file. He's a dirty-handed or dirty hand man. He worked for a living.
It's like I said though. I mean, in that world where you're making a lot of enemies, there's always somebody that wants to replace you, right?
Oh,
There's
yeah.
always somebody looking, especially in a job like that. There's always somebody looking to stab you in the back.
And it doesn't seem that they care what kind of story they make up.
Right.
Okay. I mean, the next thing they're going to say is this guy tore the tag off his mattress.
Right.
Oh my God, we got to call the feds. Okay, Cox Automotive, which is a big aftermarket automotive company. Used wholesale vehicle prices went down 8.9% in June from a year ago. That's good news. This is something important. Used vehicle wholesale values fell 0.6% in June from May, Cox said, July 9th. A Cox expert also gave an outlook on diminishing lease maturities. And these leases are important, or they were. Wholesale prices declined at a stronger pace than normal for much of the last 2 months, said Jeremy Robb, Senior Director of Economics and Industry Insights at Cox Automotive. Since September 22, Cox has recorded 22 straight months of negative year-over-year declines in the Manheim Index. That's the people with the auction. And so the prices are coming, the index is coming down. Average non-adjusted wholesale prices for 3-year-old vehicles, an important model year cohort at Manheim's auctions, decreased with an aggregate of 1.5% over the last 4 weeks. Well, prices declined only 0.2% in the last week of June, though. The availability of vehicles in that sought-after age bracket is declining, Cox said July 9th. That's because there are fewer off-lease vehicles flowing back into the market. Nobody leased a bunch of cars.
Well, and that becomes the question is, you're in a position where I need a new car. I know that the rates are high. We're expecting rate cuts. That it should get cheaper to borrow money. I would think that more people, and then you have a situation where the manufacturers have an abundance of cars, new cars. Oh. I would think that there should be a lot of leases occurring in the last couple of years. So I would think in the next year or so, we should have a lot of cars coming off a lease.
Car rates are like 7% now.
Well,
maybe even higher.
But I'm saying, I don't know, as far as a lease, are you getting basically the same rates for a lease though?
I don't know, but I know that's what drives the mean price, the average price.
But I'm saying if I want to wait a little, I can't wait, I need a car, I don't want to buy one, you lease one for a few years hoping the rates will come down. So I would think that we're in a situation where you're going to see a lot of cars coming off a lease here in the next year or two.
Well, you hope.
Right.
I don't know how many people leased during the COVID.
I mean, you mentioned that.
You got 3 years, 36,000 miles. That's the average lease.
I mean, you're right, though, is that most people, that's that golden number is 3 years. I want something that came off lease. I want something that's a couple years old. Right. Because
great car to buy.
Because basically you're getting, that's probably the best value, right? I mean, as far as time-wise, that's probably the best value for getting a newer car at a good price.
Especially if you got one that was used in over-the-road sales.
Yeah.
It's all highway.
Right.
Great mileage. 36,000 miles. You can probably look at the brakes, throw some new tires on there, and drive it.
There you go.
For another 30,000 miles.
Right.
It's a great way to buy a car, but there hasn't been that many leases because they're expensive.
Right.
You could pay $500 a month for a lease and put $5,000 down is what I saw today on one of the ads. $5,000 down and $509 a month.
I would think that if people aren't buying cars, that they'd be more apt to, okay, nobody's buying these cars, let's go ahead and throw them out for lease.
Well, I'm going to tell you what they're doing.
Or are you talking about those
fixing them?
Remember you talked about those year-old cars that were sitting around.
Oh,
I can't sell them. I'll just lease them out real cheap.
That would be the way to fly. That would be the way to fly. Lease out the 1-year-old cars.
Yeah.
And then people will buy them used.
And then by the time they get back, if there's problems with them, they're already a couple years old.
And you're making a fair amount on it. You're not making a killing on it like you usually
do. But it's better than sitting in a field somewhere, right?
Exactly. Rotting away.
Right.
Getting what my manager Ronnie likes to call lot rot.
Yeah. Well, I mean, again, even you get mice in there or something and chewing through wires.
The rotors rust up. Everything rusts up underneath. This stuff is noisy. People buy these cars that have been sitting for 2 years out in the field, and they're brand new, and they're driving away, and next thing you know, they're telling me, the brakes are noisy. Of course they are. The rotors are rusted. but they'll go away. It'll burn off.
Well, that's what I'm saying. You drive it for a couple of years, you shake all that off.
Yeah, a couple of
Anything,
years.
yeah.
Make yourself nuts driving a grinding car for a couple of years. That's
No, I'm saying let the other guy drive it, and then once all the rust comes off, then it's your turn 3 years later.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. All right, Hyundai. Hyundai has pushed fake electric vehicle sales reporting scheme. Napleton lawsuit claims. This is a Napleton group. They're a huge dealer group. Hyundai says it does not condone, any intentional falsification of sales reporting data and has launched an immediate investigation. Oh, I'm sure they did. The lawsuit, filed in U.S. District Court for the Northern District of Illinois in Chicago, alleges that Hyundai sales executives in the automaker's central region offered dealers allocations of high-volume vehicles and incentives if they agreed to code unsold electric vehicle inventory as part of their loaner fleet. See, there's a lot of that going around. We used to call them drac cars or whatever at Chrysler, but they use them in what they call their loaner fleet, and they end up with 1,000 miles on them or 1,500 miles, usually. According to the lawsuit, miscoding vehicles in that very way could artificially inflate the sales figures the automaker reports publicly to the press and investors, and it has created a facade of top performance. In other words, we moved 100 electric vehicles last month. No, you didn't. No, you didn't. You put them in your loaner fleet. Dealers who refused to comply were denied allegations of high-demand vehicles, such as the recently redesigned Santa Fe, the Kona, the Elantra compact sedan, the Tucson 5-seater, 3-row Palisade, Santa Cruz pickup. That's all of them. That's about all of them. And you couldn't get those if you didn't do what they told you to do, and make these cars, put them in your loaner fleet. The lawsuit also claims that non-compliant dealers would not be rewarded manufacturers' coupons called Flex Cash that really retailers could use to discount in-demand vehicles. So it helps with sales, of course. And it's just, I don't know. I don't know how to say this, but they don't need to fake. We need actual facts as consumers. We need to know what's selling, what's not, why, and how come. And that's basically what you get here. We'll tell you what they're selling for. We'll tell you what the cause is, why they're not selling. And there's reasons for all of it. Like those Dodge Durangos. They should have never put those as a fleet car. Or they should have changed the oil cooler. Okay? That's what they should have done. But they didn't. And this way you can tell the factory, oh yeah, those are part of our loaner fleet. And they're not. But it looks like they're off the books as new cars on a lot. So you sold them. You did something with them. You sold them to yourself for loaners. That's basically what they're doing. It's just not right. This is all part of that whole scheme. All right, Chuck. When you were a kid, did your dad ever call you a dipstick?
No, I don't believe so.
Oh, my dad, I thought my name, until I was 12, I thought that was my God-given name. Come here, dipstick. It was bad. Well, the old reliable dipstick is sliding into obsolescence. And it's pretty good reason why. It may seem counterintuitive, replacing a simple, trusty, low-tech part with costly sensors to measure oil. But this is why some automakers are going that route. Well, if you would measure oil more, guys, it has been replaced by an oil level measuring system that uses a sensor mounted vertically in the oil pan. The sensor transmits data that can be accessed on the car's touchscreen in the center of the dash, similar to the method used in many European luxury cars for, a decade. At least I think, decade. Today's consumer does not prioritize manually checking the oil level. Okay, you don't. With a sensor that is That info is presented to them every time they turn on the ignition. The customer focused engineering, said the Stellantis spokesperson, Dale Jewett. What I want you to know, well, manufacturers don't really want the driver, their customers, under the hood anymore. And they don't. They make it so bland you can't tell what's what. A lot of cars are now hybrid and have high voltage, and there's safety concern. Well, I agree with that. Michael Croson, an assistant test project leader at Consumer Reports, said Michael Croson. Reports, he's also a trained technician who helps the publication's test car fleet keep the test car fleet in good repair at Consumer Electronics. Maybe he counts the money that people pay to get on the list and be reliable. Okay, U.S. factory incentives drive big gains in April. April electric vehicle registrations, despite Tesla took a 17% bath. A U.S. electric vehicle registrations rose 14% in April after a lackluster first quarter thanks to automaker excess incentives in excess of $10,000 on some models. Yow! But Tesla's numbers continue to fall sharply, and its share of the electric vehicle segment dropped below 50% according to new vehicle data from S&P Global Mobility. The EV data is only for the registration of new battery electric vehicles and does not include the hybrids. Analysts said the uptick in EV registrations shows consumers are still interested in the segment despite a recent lull. No kidding. Lull? The growth is being driven by bonus cash, subsidized financing, and lease deals that bring electric vehicle payments closer to those for vehicles with internal combustion engines, including gasoline electric hybrids. So what they're trying to tell you is, even though the electric vehicle is still the most expensive piece of junk on the road, I didn't say that, did I? It's the most expensive car on the road. You can buy a battery hybrid and internal combustion cheaper. And these new incentives are supposed to bring that electric vehicle closer to those prices, so that it's not a stretch to not buy internal combustion. It's to buy an electric vehicle. What they don't say in this article is the number of people that have said they will never ever buy an electric vehicle, the number of people that want to get rid of theirs and get an internal combustion vehicle, and the people that said they're not even likely to try it, or the people that have one, they want to get rid of them. So Chuck, we're at a place where it's not the same. It's apples and oranges, these cars. You're only going to sell cars to people that want them. Let's put it that way. You're not going to sell steak to a vegetarian.